Because the family is essential to the life of society and to the universal church, it's essential that we have strong families. So I want to take 2 Sundays and address this subject just a little bit more clearly. A lot of this will, of course, be reviewed, but that's all right. We need to have things repeated. And this Sunday, I want to speak about the Christian family as the domestic church. And in order to understand how the family is the domestic church, I want to speak about 2 different things. One is considering the marks of the church, and the other is her missions. The marks are familiar to you already, although you might not remember that that's what they're called. The church founded by Christ, as we profess in the Nicene Creed at Sunday Mass, is one holy, Catholic, and apostolic. And these, therefore, are applied to the domestic church, the family. The church is one because she's the mystical body of Christ, and our head does not have multiple bodies. The church is one because the church is also the bride of Christ, and he is not a polygamist. So the unity of the church is important. And in the home, that unity begins between the parents, obviously, in the sacrament of matrimony, because this union must be in God. It's not a humanly established union only. And beyond that, parents should have a united front in front of their children. That is, that they talk about things and agree on things before they're executed in the family. It's one of the reasons why marriage preparation is so important. There are many couples, many of whom never end up getting married at the church, who come and ask for a quick wedding because this is when they want it, and this is when the venue's available, and they're in love, and why should they have to wait, etc., etc., etc. Well, you have to wait, my dear children, because marriage isn't easy. And there's a whole bunch of things that need to be talked about before you say, I do. Because you need to make sure you know what you're saying, I do too. And you don't get to know a person overnight. And there's a lot that goes into family life that requires that. So it's important that that preparation takes place, but then also, of course, even after marriage, there's a whole bunch of things you weren't expecting you were going to have to deal with, and you have to make sure that you two talk before you make a decision for the family. This unity also needs to be under the father, which means women need to marry. Young ladies, are you listening? You need to marry someone who is both capable and you are willing to let be the unifier of your family. And this unity must extend to everyone in the family. Now, this can be practiced in error. Very often families will get defensive and say, well, you can't criticize one of us. Well, no, your child or your spouse may actually need criticism. So you can't, that unity can't be at the expense of truth, but it definitely needs to be real. But it's also, again, as I said, submitting to truth, but of course secondary then with our union with Christ. We can never allow a family member and our union with that family member, no matter how close that is, to take us away from Christ. The church of God is also holy. She's holy because she comes from God, she exists for God, and she exists to make us holy. Now, at some point, I will start giving quizzes, but I haven't repeated this often enough yet. So, how many of you know what the word holy means? It's very important because we use the word all the time. The word holy means set apart. And the Christian family must be set apart. Not in the sense of bastioning yourself off from the entire world, but there must be some kind of separation. You, as a Christian family, cannot live like everybody else. For some of you young ones, or even not so young ones, well, why can't we do this or that just like so-and-so at school? Because they're not living the Christian life. And just because they're doing it doesn't mean that we are. We have to shoot for heavenly success, not earthly success. The two ends of marriage are directed towards the sanctity. Marriage is firstly for the procreation of children for the kingdom of God, and secondly for that helping of the spouses between themselves to get each other to heaven. And the model of all this, of course, is found in the Holy Family of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. The Church of Christ is also Catholic, not in the sense of a denomination, because we said earlier, it's not a matter of denominations, there is one universal church. And it's universal, which is what Catholic means. There's another word, you should know what that means. Catholic means universal. Because all of humanity is intended to be a member of it, and because she contains all of the Christian faith. And as that applies to the home, that means that the entire home is Catholic, in the membership and in the way it's lived. Now, does that mean that a Catholic cannot marry a non-Catholic? Well, that's not the ideal. Because while it's possible, and I'm aware of couples where that works, I do know that it's very difficult, especially on the Catholic, but also on the non-Catholic, because if they don't know what they're getting themselves into, and they're only marrying the person, they don't realize they're marrying into the religion, that can cause a lot of trouble. It causes a lot of trouble with the children as well. So while it is possible, it's very important to consider that divided faith in the home is bad for the home. That's why I tell all of you, if you're not married yet, your first question should be, let me see your rosary. If they're not carrying one, move on. Am I being slightly dramatic? Slightly. But it's actually, I've had enough people in my office with marital problems that involve a disparity of not having the same ideas about faith, that I'm not completely joking at all. It's very important that we're careful about this. I would also like to maybe compile a video one day of all of the spouses that didn't know what they were getting into when they first agreed to marry a Catholic. Obviously, when children grow, they have free will, they can make their own mistakes, and parents can't control that no matter how hard they try, and they need to accept that limitation. But in the home itself, the Catholicism should be universal. But it should also be about everything about how the family lives. If a family is Catholic only when they come to Mass on Sunday or say the Rosary together, but in everything else they're living as pagans, that is not being Catholic. And finally, the church is apostolic. She's apostolic because Christ founded her upon St. Peter and the other apostles, and she has both what the apostles were taught to pass on, as well as the authority that the apostles were given, which she exercises. The family, the Christian family, receives the faith that's handed down by the apostles, and then the parents aid in handing that on. Parents also exercise the role of the apostle in the home, both not only in the teaching, but in the authority that they exercise and their responsibility for the family. Remember that being a criteria for being an apostle is giving witness. So the family, the Christian family, must give witness to Christ in the way it lives. People should know, not because you're blowing horns or putting up signs, but the way you live, that you have a Christian family and that there's no doubt about that. We give that example to our neighbors, but even also our extended family, because even though they may be Catholic in name, they are not often Catholic in practice. Christ's church is one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic, and she fulfills his triple mission of priest, prophet, and king by teaching, governing, and sanctifying, and the domestic church does likewise. I've spoken about teaching before, and I'm going to keep doing it until I don't have to. But parents are the first teachers. They take that commitment when they get married and have children. What does that mean? I'll give you a dramatic example of what that means. That means the catechism classes should not actually be necessary in this parish. What should happen is a man and a woman married of course, bring their child and say, my son or daughter is ready for confirmation. And I say, okay, Eduardo, do you know your act of contrition? You got your 10 Commandments down? You know all this? Good? Okay, very good. Next confirmation is on this date. Make sure you're there. That should be all I have to do. It should be that simple. But it's not, because parents rely on the parish to do too much. This parish is moving away from that model and putting it back in the hands of the families where it belongs. Most importantly, though, parents, you cannot give what you don't have. So make sure that you are doing your own study, which is essential. If you form your children well, they will be better prepared to raise their children. One of the things people don't recognize, I'm telling you, you young people especially, marriage prep. I talked about how important it is to have marriage preparation and take your time. It's also important for you to know your faith now. There is no later. Because once you meet her or him, it's all downhill from there with time. There's no time after that. Because first of all, you're into each other, and then you're having to worry about establishing a home, and then you have children, and if you don't think they take a lot of time, okay, you need to know your faith now and not wait, because there is no later. Take this time now to learn, to be formed, so that you will then be ready when that happens, instead of, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing, because I only remember the things that they taught me in First Communion, and that's it. But more importantly than the study or the teaching, and it's very important, is the way you live. Your own personal example has a profound effect on your children. If you are not the Christian men and women that you are supposed to be, your children will know. They may never put it into words, but they will know, and they will not believe, because your actions betray the faith and Christ. You have to show that what you believe is real by doing it. If your children don't see you praying, when you tell them that they need to go pray, they're going to be, right, okay. Or even worse, you need to go to confession. And they just look at you like, and? Are you coming? Because I hear that all the time. My parents don't go to confession. Oh, please, children, look around at your parents right now. Go right ahead. Elbow them. It's great. Get the guilt trip going. I don't mind at all. You have to set that example for your children. And if you're not doing it, may they elbow you. The governance of the church is the same in the family. It's given to the parents and especially to the fathers, but not to lord it over their children or their wives, but in order to lead them and to help them grow out of respect and to foster their lives. You men, you parents, might as well use that authority God's given you, because you're going to have to answer for it one day, because it's been given to you for the benefit of your family. But remember that the formation of your children is not merely in their external conduct, but in their character. You can force conformity with the belt or the chancla up to a point. But at some point, that's it. So your formation of them has to be in their character, not just in their outward behavior. They have to truly believe and hope in God, truly love God and their neighbor, be prudent, courageous, temperate, and just, humble, and obedient, and not just out of fear. And finally, the mission of the church is to sanctify. And while it is a mission of the universal church, because of how much time that they should have at home, it is principally taught in the home. A Christian family must pray together. Now, for those of you who do that, I will say to your children, stop arguing with your parents when it's time to pray. If you can't put down that video game because because your parents tell you it's time to go pray the rosary, you should have that game, or whatever it is that you're not able to let go of. We have to pray together as families, and this has to be led by the father. Period. End of story. The statistics all bear out the fact that if the man doesn't do it, it's not going to take root. So, ladies, be patient with them. We're stubborn, hard-headed, etc., etc. But it must be done by the father of the family. The family, again, must frequent the sacraments together. Come to Mass like you're doing. But also confession. And ultimately, holiness is found in the fulfillment of the duties of our state in life, doing our duties with love. All things being equal, that means while the man, and often the woman, has to contribute to earning the living, the man must be the spiritual leader of the home, not just the one who provides materially for the family. They have to provide emotionally and spiritually as well. You men are the pastors of your domestic church. And your role is to be as involved in the home as much as your wife is, and so far as you can. Wives should work with their husbands. This again goes back to the marriage preparation, why it's very important that husbands and wives prepare before the marriage to understand that they are partners in this, and that they both have an essential role in the home. And children are not only formed by their families, their parents, but they are supposed to contribute to their families as well. Not just passive recipients of benefits until they can go get a job. They have chores that they need to do. Play is important for all of us at all ages, but they cannot take precedence over the formation of our children. The example I love giving of this is of my niece. My brother and his wife do an excellent job, and as I like to caveat this, I'm not just saying that because he's my brother. I can tell you plenty of stories about how he was a jerk growing up. So he's simply grown up and matured into a much better man. So I'm not defending him simply because my brother, but I've seen the fruits of how they live their family life, and it's very good. But I remember that when she was around 2, I don't remember, it was a couple of years ago, and I don't remember the age exactly, but she was really young. And I remember that at one point they'd finished in the dishwasher, and one of the things they had her do while they were putting away other things is they took the rack with the utensils, put it on the counter, opened the drawer with the utensils, the knives, forks, and spoons, and have her play a little matching game by putting everything in the correct drawer. I mean, all of my nieces and nephews know where the brooms and the vacuums and everything are, and they are able to contribute. They're not, my brother is not a slave driver by any stretch of the imagination, but they're taught from a very young age that they contribute to the good of the home. And the fruits of that, again, have been seen in the fact that they're very good children and young men. I lose track. I think the oldest is about 13 or so now, but they've done a very good job because they have started from the very beginning raising the children very well. I've lamented, and more frequently, that I'm tired of trying to do it all. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm just trying to do too much. So shame on me. But part of it is it's not my responsibility to do everything. This is a large parish. No, it's not as big as parishes in maybe Dallas or other big cities, but that's just insane. That shouldn't exist. There's no way a priest can do his job with that many people. But even here, to give everyone the personal attention that a priest would like to give is impossible. And therefore, we have to work together. I've said this before more recently, especially because this is one of the focuses I'm trying to do right now, is spend more time with families. And I think, from what I've seen so far in the last couple of months, that has been very beneficial to all of us. But I'm here principally to help families fulfill their responsibilities. So if you need help in any way, let me know, because the more personal help that I can give, the better. The parish is very important. The school can do more harm than good sometimes. But nothing is more important for the formation of the Christian soul, and therefore its salvation and the greater glory of God, than the domestic church.